so this is definitely not gonna work. Now in this side quest that I've picked up, I'm going to be making an Elven Cloak from Lord of the Rings. Now the Fellowship of the Ring is no short movie, so it gives you plenty of time to craft this Elven Cloak. And I also watched the extended edition to give me a little bit more time. And at the end, I'll let you know if I hit that mark. But in this video today, I'm going to show you how I created my Elven Cloak and the best ways to go about doing so. After watching the movies and tons of tutorials on other people, how they have done it, I have mashed them all together and made my own way of making my Elven Cloak and taken the best parts of all these different ones across the internet and the movies in order to make one as accurately as I could while not breaking the budget also. Now I'll show you all the tips and tricks I learned along the way, all while making it very easy for beginners to pick up and make their own Elven Cloak themselves. So starting this project out, the list of items you need is very short, luckily, and fairly cheap to get. The materials and the cost will be in the description. All you really need for this is fabric of your choice, needle, thread, scissors, and a clasp to hold it together at the end if you do not have your Leaves of Lorien, which I don't have mine yet, but that might be a future video. So what a lot of people are doing is they're taking their cloak, assume this is your cloak for your back, and there's a circle here for your head. You cut that out to measure to make sure your head fits through it. Measure your neck or something similar. And then basically you do a half circle on your fabric in order to cut out the piece that you want or need. Now this project is not without challenges.
One does not simply walk into Mordor.
I am a larger guy, so I had to make some adjustments on fabrics and how I had to go about doing so. I had to cut apart one large piece and sew it back together again to make it large enough to be viable for me.
Obligatory cute puppy shot.
We have cut and sewn our giant piece of fabric together so I can cut it to my size. We're now going to cut it into a semicircle, and then after that we will do a neck hole and then cut out the piece for the hood, and then we'll sew those together. So you're going to have to measure this to fit your body the way you want it to. And now I did not do very specific measurements because I wanted to give this more of a rough cut look, and I gave it rough measurements to make sure it fit my body. So measuring from my shoulders down to where I want it to end on my legs is what I went with. Once you have a giant square of fabric, measure it out to your specifications of your body, how you would like it to fit you. Now when you're cutting your fabric, you want to make sure it's in a semicircle in order to give you the cut you want for this type of cloak. And now when you're measuring this, make sure to remember you're going to cut a hole out for where your head and neck's going to be, and that will be an additional amount to your cloak. And so that's going to go over the top of your shoulders, so you will have to make sure your measurements count for that when going down your back, that it fits your body well, and then make sure to write down those measurements. And for your neck hole, also make sure to measure this to be exactly the same for your hood, because your hood will be matching this exactly when you attach it to the cloak itself. Now when you do cut your neck hole, you will have two little triangles that are flipping off the edges. You do not need those. You can cut them if you would like to make them straight. If not, you can fold them over, sew those parts, and then cut them afterwards, depending on what you want to do. Or if you want to leave them, you totally can. But the clasp will not be attached to those. It will be attached to where the hood meets the cloak, and those will be the parts that hook together. So you do not actually need those little triangles. If you want to just chop those off, that's fine. One thing to remember is that to line up all of your seams so that they are all on the inside or outside, depending on where you want them showing. Generally, you're going to put the seams on the inside that are connected together, so you have a little bit of fabric left on that edge, and that's inside your cloak, not outside, so the outside looks seamless. And now, unlike Gandalf, I am a little late on this project.
A wizard is never late.
And went a little bit over time and wasn't able to finish it within the amount of time of the Fellowship being on. What's great is this is a project that you can do in roughly the time of the Fellowship. I was able to do it pretty close to time, a little bit over, about 15 minutes past the movie being finished. And so realistically, if you have a little bit of sewing knowledge, you can get this done in that amount of time. Now, when creating mine, I did not have the Leaves of Lorien.
Not idly do the Leaves of Lorien fall.
But if you have the ability to go buy one or make one yourself, that would be a great addition to this cloak and a good way to finish the project. Now, the process of sewing this together is not too difficult. I did do it by hand because that is the way that I learned to sew. I had learned to sew here recently in a previous video that I did. And now I use the back stitch to create this cloak because that is one of the stronger stitches you can use. And this stitch that I went with because it's one that I know well and I can do it repeatedly fairly quickly. Now, one thing that could save you some time is that if you can find a piece of fabric that is the correct dimensions for you before you have to cut it, is going to save you a lot of time. I had to cut mine in half and sew it back together again in order to make it large enough to cut for my body. And you'll save probably an hour of time between doing that and sewing it all back together again. Now, most of these tutorials end up going with a pointed hood, but I decided to go more with a rounded hood. You basically use a piece like this. This is your hood end, and this is your opening for your head. This bottom part at the bottom there is the connecting piece to your cloak. So you can make this however you want. I actually went for a curve here instead of a point because I think it looks better and closer to the movies. So basically you cut the piece you want, you sew it up to here, you sew it back down here, and then you will sew this part to your cloak and connect it there. I left my frayed edge the way it is because I think it looks cool. I think it looks like it's used and it's an actual cloak. I found this at the store. It's a clasp that looks somewhat Lord of the Rings-esque. Basically, you just put it onto your cloak in the place where you're gonna be connecting your hood and your cloak together. You put it in between those two sewing marks, and then you just sew this attached to it. Nothing too fancy. Just make sure it's attached and connected to both sides of it so it has structural integrity. Now you can use whatever clasp is available. This is what the store had when I went, but you just need something simple because realistically, eventually you can put the leaves of Lorien over it, but this is still going to hold it together and not put stress on that brooch or whatever you want to make. In total, this project took me about 4 hours to complete. That's including sewing, cutting, and putting everything together. This makes a great piece to add to a Lord of the Rings cosplay, or taking it to a rent fair, or just adding it to a costume for Halloween. But it is a fairly high quality cloak for making it yourself. But the ability to make this Elven Cloak is not super difficult as long as you have the ability to sew or have someone you know be able to teach you how to. It could be a fun project watching the Fellowship of the Ring and creating your cloak together. If you have any questions or comments, please drop them below. I would love to answer them and talk to you. And please like and subscribe, it helps me out a ton. And let me know what I should do next, what craft you would like to see done. I could continue this and make the leaves of Lorien, or make some lambus bread. Just let me know what you think is best, and I will go for it. But that's it for this one. Make something with your hands, create something beautiful. See ya!